Hello everyone. This video is part of a series where we are implementing a microservices-based social media application with the main goal of learning the microservices pattern. We are also interested in some of the challenges and the solutions for these challenges when it comes to microservices. Here is a brief overview of what we are working on at the moment and our plan for the near future. Of course, there is much more than these major areas here, but this shows briefly what we plan to implement next. Here is a more detailed breakdown of the tasks in each area, and as I said, there is more yet to come. But if you're interested, you can pause the video and you can check this by yourself. We also have a Jira board where we track the progress of the implementation of our user stories and their respective subtasks. In the previous video, we implemented the NodeMailer app SMTP server, and this class is responsible for returning the configuration of an SMTP server in order for us to send emails. What I want to do today is I want to change this a little bit, and I want to pass all of this configuration via environment variables. So I thought again about it, and I remember that, so I think in the last video I mentioned the factory pattern, but when it comes to actually passing configuration, I think that defining this in the environment variables is actually a more correct approach than directly including it in our code. So this will simplify the initialization of our NodeMailer email API, and it will also dismiss the need for a factory here. So I know that the factory is interesting, it's a nice pattern to know, and perhaps it would be nice to discuss it with you at the moment, but I think that in the future there will be plenty of opportunities for us to think about it, so we'll also discuss this in the future. Actually, I'm planning to create a series of videos on design patterns for object-oriented programming. So if you're interested in getting notifications once that series is out, then you can just subscribe to the channel. I will try to implement it as soon as possible, but I also have other series that I am working on, so it may take a little bit of time. So for this video, what I want to do is to change the NodeMailer app SMTP server class to actually load the information from our process.env or from our environment variables. So first thing, I will rename this, right? So I will just refactor and I will rename this to NodeMailer SMTP server. I'll rename the instance of the classes, and I think that there will be a couple of broken imports, so this also an import that we need to fix. And instead of passing the values here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass a process.env.host, or let's say SMTP host. I will also pass a process.env.smtp port. Port. I will also pass a process.env.smtp, and then here I think I'll take from my environment example SMTP API key public and SMTP API key private, right? So I'll just write it here and I will pass this as a variable, process.env.smtp key or SMTP API key private. And as you can see, then it immediately starts to complain here because our SMTP server config is actually requiring this to be populated. So before we continue, let me add the missing variables to our .env.example to ensure that they will be populated before the startup of our application. So by defining these environment variables here, if I come back to my index.ts file, then it will, by using the .env from .env-safe module, then it will look at this .env.example file and it will make sure that whatever file we are using to load the environment variables from, it actually has all the variables defined. So here we are using .env.dev, and I need to add these two variables to my .env.dev file, like so. So if I come back to my NodeMailer SMTP, oh no, I lost the information, but this is localhost and this is 1025 if I'm not mistaken. I can just briefly check this on the server here. Exactly, 1025 and localhost. Now what we can do is here we can make sure that these variables are defined, and the port, it will still complain because it requires a number, but we will do so by just saying parse int, right? So parse int, I think that this should be enough for us to have an integer as the port. And why do we need an integer as the port? That's because the node mailer, the create transport method, it actually expects the port to be a number, right? So it's not really something that we can work with. We have to follow the convention, or we need to pass an object of a different configuration. But for us at the moment, this will work just fine. So let's have a look here if there is any possibility for some refactoring, but I think that this is good enough. So we can probably say that if we wanted to extract this logic here, we would say SMTP server is going to be equal to a new SMTP server, and then we would create the transporter by saying that this SMTP server dot get config, right? Like this. It's up to you if you want to assign this to a variable. Maybe we want to assign this later on to a class property here at the top as a private property. For the moment, because we are kind of giving up on the factory pattern, then this should be enough for us to have this from inside our create transport method. So we can just create a new node mailer SMTP server and get the config, right? If I wanted to be even more strict, I could say that this would be a static method, but then I need to define this also as static methods or static properties, but I don't really want to do that. So I prefer to have this as class, as instance variables. So let's see if this is going to be working. Now I need to start my application, and I will start in the development mode. So let's give it a couple of seconds and let's see if it will initialize. So it's initializing correctly, which means that the email sender should be working. I'll come back here to my emails, and as you can see, the last email was sent some minutes ago, at least from my time. But we have 5 emails, right? So the idea now is that if we come here and we say await email sender dot send sign up verification email, and here I have to pass a to email, and that's going to be test@test.com. This, once I save, should restart the server, and then we should have a 6th email within our inbox. Exactly. So now you see that the count is 6. So this is still working as expected. I'll remove this because I don't want to send an email every time I start my development application or my local application. But we are now able to configure the node mailer SMTP server according to our process.env variables. Okay, so I have some value set in the .env.production here, and then I think we will use the .env.production for actual production API, so I will not open this during the videos because it contains some private keys, and I will also not commit this to the repository. But in any case, the .env.dev will be enough for us whenever we are running the project locally, and this is the one that we will use the most, or at least that you will see the most in the videos. So now we have a working node mailer email API with a working SMTP server, and this can be then used to send emails whenever a new user signs up in our application, right? So now here in the sign up method, we have here that once the user signs up, we would like to send a verification email. And if I come to the user method here, I think that we don't have any pre-save hooks that will do this logic for us. So we will implement this in our sign up route. Okay. So that's it for this video. And if you want to be informed about the next videos in this playlist, then just make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, thank you for your time, and bye bye.